really like how he put that hard G at the end. Good morning,
Good morning, Guff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be our
Gus. Good morning, Guff.
intro. Well, good morning, good evening, and good night. Yeah, this is take 2 because I don't know how to talk.
Neither do I, but we decided to do this.
Yeah, we decided to do this with a friend today, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Nathan Smith,
I'm Zach King.
with our guest,
David Pierce.
yeah, Pastor Dave. And I got to remember to keep my voice down because there are other people in the office today.
Yep. Which is why I'm here.
Welcome.
To remind him to keep his voice down?
Yep.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get a little loud.
And which is why we recorded the last episode in our apartment because I definitely did not keep my voice down on that.
Nope. Well, as promised, we are going over the last 5 chapters, 6 chapters. Last 6 chapters, 5 chapters, whatever it is. I can't count right. The last 5 chapters of Job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's dig in. First, let's do a quick review.
A quick little recap.
So
last
3 friends.
Yeah, last we left off, Job, his 3 friends, and Elihu, the odd man out, are sitting there having this debate. Well,
Yeah, Eliphaz.
Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar.
Yeah.
Elihu was there. He wasn't taking a part of the debate, and he was just like, okay, I'm done listening. Y'all suck.
He said, I'm done, and then told Job and his friends basically his thoughts. He said, look, I'm, what's the exact wording? He said, I'm the youngest one in the room. His anger burned against his 3 friends because they found no answer and yet had condemned Job.
Right.
So they took the Lord out of context.
Right.
And then he said, I am young in years, and you are old. Therefore I was shy and afraid to tell you what I think. I thought age should speak, but it is the spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives them understanding. So listen to me, I'm going to tell you what I think. And then...
Which, by the way, Elihu showed wisdom beyond his years by listening to older people speak first. Then he realized they were not saying the right things. And he was like, okay, all right, listen here. Blah.
Yeah. But then the Lord essentially cuts off Elihu. Yeah, because Elihu ends with, therefore men fear him. He does not regard any who are wise of heart. And then boom, the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind.
Yep.
What's a whirlwind?
Or tornado. Yeah.
Imagine that. You're just
That's pretty wild.
Job and the 3 friends and Elihu, all of a sudden, boom.
If you read in 37, Elihu has some real, or even going back into 36, Elihu has some really interesting statements that kind of give an indication that there is actually a storm that is presently brewing.
Right.
So 36:27, he starts talking about the hydrological cycle. He draws up the drops of water. They distill rain from the mist, which the clouds pour down. They drip upon man abundantly. Can anyone understand the spreading of the clouds, the thundering of his pavilion? Behold, he spreads his lightning about him, covers the depths of the sea. For by these he judges peoples. He gives food in abundance, covers his hands with the lightning, and commands it to strike the mark. Its noise declares his presence, the cattle also concerning what is coming up.
Huh.
At this also my heart trembles and leaps from its place. Listen closely to the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that goes out from his mouth. His lightnings to the end of the earth. He thunders with his majestic voice. God thunders with his voice wondrously. Verse 5. Verse 6, to the downpour and the rain, he says, be strong. Verse 9, out of the south comes the storm, out of the north the cold. From the breath of God ice is made, and the expanse of the waters is frozen. Also with moisture he loads the thick clouds. He disperses the cloud of his lightning. Listen to this, O Job. Stand and consider the wonders of God. Do you know how God establishes them and makes the lightning of his cloud to shine? Do you know about the layers of the thick clouds? Can you with him spread out the skies? Now men do not see the light which is bright in the skies, but the wind has passed and cleared them. Out of the north comes golden splendor. Around God is awesome majesty, the Almighty. We cannot find him. He's exalted in power. He will not do violence to justice and abundant righteousness. Therefore men fear him. He does not regard any who are wise of heart. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. So there's some kind of indication that there's a real and torrential and ginormous storm that either has been brewing through much of this conversation, or in Elihu's discourse, there's a storm that is coming and is surrounding them, and Elihu has the proper view of God when he sees this storm, and it's really a high and lofty view, and it's really majestic as he describes this storm. And then God shows up in his power and in his grace, really. So the fascinating thing about Job 38 through the end, if you ignore the rest of the Bible, then it seems really disconnected, and it seems really really harsh, and it seems that God is almost being a cosmic bully. But there's a doctrine here that is phenomenally important for the creature to understand. And it's the doctrine of the creature and creator distinction.
Right.
The creature-creator distinction. Or creator-creature, if you want to put them in their right order. The creator-creature. And this goes back to Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So many times in Genesis 1 and 2, then God said, and there was. Then God said, and there was. And the creative means that God uses to create the universe is his voice. He simply speaks, and it begins existing, which on its own is fascinating. Every single piece of God's creation obeys him instantly and implicitly, without question, except for mankind and the angels. Those that are given the ability to make choices don't make the right choice. So the question of the doctrine of creator-creature and the distinction between the two of us really gets to the issue of origins, but then also accountability. If we came from nothing, if we came from goo by way of the zoo and we got to you, it's Answers in Genesis. Ken
like
Ham, he put that together. It's locked in my brain, but so not original with me.
I love
But
Ken
if
Ham.
that's how we got here, if we're just a cosmic burp, then we're not accountable to anyone. We're accountable to perhaps the society, perhaps the common good, perhaps our own self-interest. But if there isn't a creator, then we're not accountable. And so all through the scriptures, God is elevated and magnified as the creator to whom everyone must give an account.
And to kind of further that point, if what the ancient Greeks, Romans, and Nordic peoples, the Norse believed was true, where there was a host of gods that came together and created the cosmos, the world, and the people. If you look at especially the Greek pantheon and the Greek stories, Zeus is not entirely a good person.
No.
No.
No way.
So, if the ruler of the gods, Sky Father, is not the best person, why should I follow his commands? Why should I sacrifice to him?
Right.
Yeah, he's just a powerful divine schmuck That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all he is.
He's basically me that can throw around lightning bolts, but you know.
So the idea of God being the creator and that distinction,
Right.
it shows up in two really powerful ways in Acts. In Acts 4, Peter and John are arrested for preaching the gospel. They're brought into the Jewish officials, and they were threatened. And so picking up in the very middle, Acts 4:23, when they, Peter and John, had been released, they went to their own companions and reported all that the chief priests and the elders had said to them. When they, the companions, heard this, they lifted their voices to God with one accord and said, and this is such a profound, where are we at, verse 24, this is such a profound prayer, because in the very middle of having been beaten, threatened, arrested, the very seeds of persecution of the early church, their prayer is, O Lord, it is you who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, the Creator, who by the Holy Spirit through the mouth of our father David your servant said, why did the Gentiles rage and the peoples devise futile things? The kings of the earth took their stand, the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. For truly in this city there were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel, to do whatever your hand and your purpose predestined to occur. So there's a recognition that the things that are currently happening are a fulfillment of Psalm 2. It's a direct quotation of Psalm 2. So they're in the middle of being, they've been imprisoned, they've been released, and their prayer is appealing to God as the Creator and the knower of all, the maker of all, the supreme authority. And from there, verse 29, and now, Lord, take note of their threats, grant that your bondservants, that's them, may speak your word with all confidence, while you extend your hand to heal, and signs and wonders take place through the name of your holy servant Jesus. When they had prayed, the place where they had gathered together was shaken, and they were all filled with the Holy Spirit, began to speak the word of God with boldness. Their fruit and their success in their ministry is largely connected to their position, that they rightfully understood that they had a low creaturely perspective, a low creaturely position, and they were accountable to God, the maker of heaven and earth. And it was because of him and because of his servant Jesus, his son Jesus, that was the only way that they were able to preach with boldness.
Right.
So having that right perspective, the creator-creature distinction, makes a tremendous difference here at the beginning of the church.
And even so, one chapter later, in chapter 5 of Acts, we get
that's right.
we get a Pharisee, Gamaliel. Acts 5, I'll start in verse 38. So, in this present case, I tell you, stay away from these men and leave them alone. For if this plan this plan or this work is of human origin, it will fail. Verse 39. But if it is of God, you will not be able to overthrow them. You may even be found fighting against God. They were persuaded by him. So, that was one of the few times that one of the Pharisees actually said something kind of smart.
Yeah, we did have our previous episode was about roasting the Pharisees and how they don't have a proper view of God.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting theme here.
Yeah, kind of an interesting theme.
Having a proper view of God and
right,
worshiping Him in the
If
way
only
that He
God
deserves.
would properly reveal himself adequately so that we might know him and have a relationship with him and understand his character. Oh man.
Wait a minute.
Oh yeah.
That's right. He kind of did that a lot.
Job 38:1 just does say God came down in a whirlwind, so
He's the appearances that God has in the Bible is absolutely incredible.
Right.
They're all miracles. But okay, that begs the question: how many times do we forget God anyway, or not worship Him when He deserves to be worshipped, or choose to worship other things, or get caught up in our own anxieties, in our own, oh, God put me in this position. Why God? And then we look at 38 verse 2 of Job, and he says, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge?"
Gird up your loins like a man.
Mm-hmm.
I will ask you, and you instruct me. So having that proper view of God, that He's the creator, and we're the creature. Job is the creature. It's been 30 some odd chapters of these guys going round and round, arguing about whether God is the rewarder of the righteous and the punisher of the wicked, arguing about whether or not Job has done something wrong. Job seems to believe in his own mind that he's not done anything wrong, and he has so many complaints against God. And in a tremendous act of grace, God shows up and reminds Job that he is the creature.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not right and it is not fitting for the creature to challenge and to rebuke the creator.
right.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that we aren't allowed to ask questions of God.
Right.
He invites us to ask questions. In Isaiah, he says, "Come, let us reason together."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's tremendous value in asking questions of the Scriptures.
Yeah.
But that attitude of faith and that posture of humility is what makes all the difference. And Job, by this point, has perhaps in some ways stood up and is challenging God, and he needs to be brought low.
Mm-hmm.
And God, as the creator, shows up in a miraculous and powerful way, asks him a series of what I counted just a moment ago, at least 54 questions in chapters 38, 39, and 40. 40.
Here we go.
God asks Job roughly 54 questions. And listen, that was just me doing a quick and dirty. I counted how many question marks I could see. And then if a line looked like it was a compound sentence, I counted that as 2 questions. Okay, so 38, chapter 38, verse 31. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? 1 question, 2 components. Mm-hmm. I'm counting that as 2 questions.
Right.
And I probably missed some. So this is not an exegetical analysis of how many questions God asked Job.
Mm-hmm.
It was enough that Job was reminded of his small stature.
Right.
And it was enough that he takes the proper posture of a creature.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's what was missing in the other guys' counsel and their advice, and that's what was present in Elihu's advice.
Right.
And it's really it's the posture and the attitude that Job had early on.
Right.
When he said to his dearly beloved wife, "Shall we not accept good things from the Lord and also the bad things?"
Right.
Right.
You know.
And she decided that, no, just curse God and die. So, if you find a wife who has that attitude, if you find a girl who has that attitude, don't make her your wife.
Exactly.
And if you have a wife who has that attitude, pray for a thunderstorm like Job and his friends experienced. She needs to be, we all need to be questioned by God appropriately.
Yeah.
So Job gets put in his proper spot, and he comes to the humble position, not humiliated, maybe in the technical sense of being humility in the low sense,
Yeah.
not shame. Job, chapter 40, verse 3-ish. Then Job answered the Lord and said, "Behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you?" Good start, man. Really good start.
Yeah.
I lay my hand on my mouth,
Mm-hmm.
a way of saying, I'm done talking.
Yep.
Once I have spoken. He's acknowledging that he did the speaking, and I will not answer. Even twice, and I will add nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
He's recognizing that he has no answer.
Right.
Yeah.
All
But
of the
he doesn't
questions that God
repent it.
asks, the implied answer is that Job doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when the mountain goat gives birth to its young?
Yeah.
What?
No, he doesn't. Can you bind the cords of the Pleiades? No, I can't. Can you call down snow from heaven? No.
Nope.
Nope.
So he
Yeah.
finally gets it.
Yeah.
And he's made aware of the proper posture of the creature.
He still hasn't repented yet, though, at that point. Which is kind of why I think God keeps going after that.
Chapter 38, verse 21 is interesting to me. It says, "Don't you know, you were already burned. You have lived so long." So God, that's after God's first like series of intense questioning of Job, and he goes on Job and he's like, "Don't you know, you were already there. You were there.
You were there when it happened.
You know, you were
never
born. Don't you know, Job?" Yeah.
Hey, sometimes we need to be reminded of that too, though.
Yeah.
The sarcasm is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really shows up in really clear ways, the age being one of them.
Yeah.
And it's... You kind of feel bad for Job a little bit, because he's kind of getting beat up on by God.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
But he's not. He's
Yes,
being
no.
put in his proper place. And Job, as well as all of us, need to be reminded often of who God really is,
Yeah.
as he has revealed himself, not as we have constructed him
Right.
Yeah.
in our mind.
That's a really good point. So chapter 39, God starts kind of just starts describing himself, the way he acts through animals and that kind of thing. So 39 verse 13 says, "The ostrich's wings flap joyously with the pinion and plumage of love, for she abandons her eggs to the earth and warms them in the dust. And she forgets that a foot may crush them, or that a wild beast may trample them. She treats her young cruelly, as if they were not hers. Though her labor be in vain, she is unconcerned, because God has made her forget wisdom, and has not given her a share of understanding. When she lifts herself on high, she laughs at the horse and his rider." And then goes in about talking about the horses. Quivers, the quiver rattles against him, the flashing spear and javelin. Doesn't turn away from calamity or war, really. And from Job's perspective, that kind of stuff would look like God doesn't care. But if you look at the context, especially the context of the time and the geographical location,
Right.
ostriches in the East, the Middle East, are the bird of love. A lot of people don't remember that, and so you look at this with the pinion and plumage of love. It's hinted to, referred to there. Says she abandons her eggs to the earth and warms them in the dust. God's talking about the temperature.
Right.
There's no need for her to sit on the egg. If she sits on the eggs in 100-degree weather, her eggs are going to overheat and they'll die. So if she flies away, then the eggs will be naturally warmed, and it's out of love that she doesn't sit around them. She just flies around them and makes sure that they're protected, even though it looks like they might get crushed. Now you apply that to Job. God's allowed things to happen to Job out of love and really refinement.
Right.
And if you look at chapter 42, when God blesses Job, even more so, and we'll get there, but you look at how God blesses Job at the end of the book, probably appreciated God a little bit more, and not quite all the stuff that he was given. You know? Job appreciated God a lot more, worshipped him properly, had a proper view of him, not just the view of him that he's the vending machine in the sky.
Right.
I don't know. I thought that was a cool snippet that the Lord put in there.
Something I noticed throughout this whole God questioning Job, these, as you said, David, these 50 plus questions that God is asking Job.
Mm-hmm.
God is asking Job about intricate details of his creation.
Yeah. That's a light way of putting it.
That's a light way of putting it. These questions are about honestly the tiniest of details in the whole of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, Job, do you know how the mountain goat, can you count
The billy goat.
can you count the months they are pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's
The whole thing can be summarized in chapter 40, verse 2. Will the fault finder contend with the Almighty? Let him who reproves God answer it. Let me say that in a little bit more, probably closer to the tone that God might have used. Oh, hey, will the fault finder? Hey, Job, listen here. Will you contend with the Almighty? Oh, you know what? You reprove me. So just, answer the questions. You do it, Job. Do it. Oh, I'm insignificant. I lay my hand on my mouth. No, Job, I'm not done with you yet. You don't get it yet, bud. I'm God. And he keeps going.
chapter 40, verse 8. Would you really challenge my justice, Job? Would you declare me guilty to justify yourself? Guess what?
It don't work.
That's what the Pharisees did.
Oops. But behold, I'm insignificant. Chapter 40, verse 4. Behold, I'm insignificant. What can I reply you? I lay my hand on my mouth. When do we see this happen before? Well, if you go to chapter 21, verse 5. So Job replies to his friends. He says, listen carefully to my speech and let this be your way of consolation. Bear with me that I may speak. Then after I've spoken, you may mock. As for me, is my complaint to man, and why should I not be impatient? So he's getting very self-righteous here. Look at me, verse 5, look at me and be astonished, and put your hand over your mouth. Even when I remember I am disturbed, and horror takes hold of my flesh. Why do the wicked still live, continue on, also become very powerful? And then he talks about how the wicked prosper. But he has this attitude of, I'm the pious one, I'm the one speaking here, you guys be quiet. And then we go back to chapter 40, and after God, quite frankly, gently, because he could have done it a lot harsher, but after God reminds Job of who he is, then Job says, yep, I'm done.
Yeah.
I lay my hand over my mouth.
And it's important to remember that in chapters 1 and 2, chapter 1 begins with calling Job blameless. when the Satan, when saying
The enemy, yeah.
when the enemy comes up, God says, "Have you considered my servant Job, who is upright and blameless?" So, by the time the conversation starts, or at the time the conversation starts, Job has not done anything, really.
Yeah, when it starts.
When it starts, chapter 3, as we said in our last episode on Job, he starts the slide and he just goes on this downward spiral of self-righteousness.
Questioning God.
And to be fair, his friends aren't helping the situation either.
Well, that's why everyone gets rebuked. But
except for Elihu.
We have to remember, too, Job didn't have the first 2 chapters.
Yeah, Job didn't have that.
He didn't know he was about to get cooked. And there was no reason in his mind for it to happen to him because he had been, in God's own words, he had been an upright and righteous person.
Right.
That's God's own words in chapters 1 and 2. But Job didn't have that context. Now, as for us, we do.
Right.
So do we have an excuse? When we see things happening, stuff is going on, do we have an excuse?
No.
No, because God's already told us.
Right.
Yeah. Job knew quite a bit about God, though. Not the chapter 1 and 2 stuff, but if the events in Job occurred after the flood and before Abraham, then Job would have understood the Noahic Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
The testimony and the true record and account from Noah as he repopulated Earth's civilizations.
This is true.
And Job would have been in that world and known who the Creator is and known that there's an enemy. So he may not have known all of the specifics,
He didn't know that,
but he knew enough.
Right.
When you connect that with Romans 1, that mankind is without excuse because God has made it evident to him.
Right.
He's revealed both his divine nature and his eternal power in the things that God has made. Job knew enough. He obviously believed in some form of sacrificial system, some form of atoning for the sins of others, and some kind of substitutionary atonement to some extent. So he knew enough, and he can go off of that, which is really interesting when we get the inside scoop on chapters 1 and 2. We know what's going on when Job doesn't. But Job knows enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Chapter 2,
then,
verse 10 is just beautiful. He said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks," right after his wife says, "Curse God and die."
Yeah.
Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips.
Yeah. Up to that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even without the details, he still should have known and remembered God's character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to chapter 40 and then moving forward, so the Lord continues to challenge Job. 47, now gird up your loins like a man. I will ask you and you instruct me. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? Because Job has become self-righteous and is, and he even outright says it at the end of his eulogy, basically. Or do you have an arm like God, and can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with eminence and dignity, and clothe yourself with honor and majesty. Are you God?
Yeah.
Is the question. Can you look down on everyone who is proud and humble him, and tread down on the wicked where they stand? Hey, Job. Can you look down on the proud? Oh, wait. You're being proud, buddy. Chapter 41, he keeps going. Can you draw out a leviathan with a fish hook? A leviathan, like a sea dinosaur,
Right.
is what that is. Can you press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope on his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook?
And
He keeps asking these questions.
And like right before Joe, God, right before in chapter 40, right before chapter 41 starts, where God starts describing Leviathan,
Yeah.
40 to 15.
Yep.
Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like cattle. Look at the strength of his back and the power in the muscles of his belly. Another dinosaur.
Yeah.
He stiffens his tail like a cedar tree. The tendons of his thighs are woven firmly together. So, from 40 to 15 and into 41, God is describing just these two like massive creatures.
Yeah. Is it two or is it just one creature?
Behemoth and Leviathan.
Oh, Behemoth. Yeah, there's two in there. Sorry,
Yeah, there's
I
two.
didn't see that. Yeah. It's incredible. Now, here's a side note. Dinosaurs living among men.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. No, that's not a problem.
It's not a
at all.
problem.
No, because they're made on day 5 and 6 of creation.
Yeah.
They're not just some prehistoric, pre-man thing. No, that's not how that works.
The
Dinosaurs and men live
timeline-
together.
The timeline from the week of creation to Noah's flood, if I remember correctly, is I think 2,000 years. This is me guessing and pulling back from the big dark depths of my brain. I think it's about 2,000 years, maybe 1,500.
Right.
But even if you just look at the chronology in Genesis 5,
Yeah.
you've got Adam, who's created, has a son Seth at 130. I think it's 130, and then lives to be 930 years old after that.
Yeah, old dude.
And it isn't too much longer after Adam dies that the flood comes in.
Right.
So
Yeah,
1,000, maybe 1,500 years at the most. So to suppose that it's not unreasonable that Job and his friends would understand what this creature is. Dinosaurs would have been on the ark. Would have been. It would have been brought on 2 by 2, just like all the other animals.
Right.
Adolescence, the average size of most of the dinosaurs was about the size of a sheep, not a fully grown, ginormous thing.
Right.
And then coming off of the ark and onto the newly reformatted Earth, they would be repopulating and growing and still big. But it's not unreasonable to think that Job would understand what God was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible the description
Yeah.
the Lord gives.
And again, in intricate detail.
Very intricate detail.
So
Which kind of helps us.
Yeah.
But even so, we can also know too. I mean, yes, the Lord gave us the description right here. But they've also found, even as far back as a couple hundred years, they found dinosaur flesh.
right.
And like in the, buried and everything, but they found dinosaur flesh. So we actually still have dinosaur DNA.
Right.
So I'm just saying, with the sequencing and stuff we can do now, just a scientific
Yep.
blurb. I don't know. All right, and then we get to the very end.
Yeah.
And Job finally says, okay, we're done. 42:1. 42:1. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have declared that which I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Hear now, and I will speak. I will ask you, and you instruct me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I retract, and I repent in dust and ashes. That's a pretty big repentance. Repenting in dust and ashes. Job knows. Job realizes the position where he's in comparison to God.
He got it.
Mhm.
He finally got it. He started to see it the first time in 40, verse 3, and he's seeing it more, and he finally relents, repents, and takes that creaturely perspective.
Right.
Yeah. He retracted everything. And then after that, right away after that.
Yeah, after in verse 7,
Go for it. If you
Yeah.
want it. Yeah.
it says in verse 7, after the Lord had finished speaking to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your two friends, for you have not spoken truth about me as my servant Job has.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, Job has said, I was dumb, I'm sorry, forgive me. And God turns to Eliphaz and his friends, you're dumb, here's what you have to do to get forgiven.
Yep.
And notice here that God says, I am angry with you and your two friends. He never says anything to Elihu. Because Elihu
Elihu was right.
Yeah, Elihu in his discourse
Made a
had
good point.
actually made good points.
Mm-hmm. But then God just came in and said, all right, I'm going to take care of this. And then verse 8, now therefore take for yourselves 7 bulls and 7 rams. Go to my servant Job. So he just got done bringing Job back to earth.
Right.
Both metaphorically and, hey, Job, you're a creature.
Right.
Speaking. Sorry. So he says, go to my servant Job. So he goes back to kind of building him back up, and offer a burnt offering for yourselves, and my servant Job will pray for you. For I will accept him, so that I may not do with you according to your folly, because you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So the Lord's holding back. He's upset. And he says, if you guys go make it right and do exactly what I tell you to right now, you're forgiven, and it's let go. But if you don't...
Also, this is really interesting. Notice how God says, go to my servant Job.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
And my servant Job will pray for you.
Hey.
Doesn't a priest kind of do that?
Yeah. Hey, you three.
That's what he did early on.
Yeah.
With the sons and daughters.
God goes, hey, you three. You remember that guy you were talking about? Take these 14 animals, go to him, and he'll pray for you.
That's a lot of animals for one sacrifice.
Yeah.
God must have been pretty upset.
That's
Normally
14,
it's like a sheep.
That's 14 animals each.
Yeah, that's right. It would be each, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take for yourselves 7 bulls.
And verse
How
9
many
says
animals
they
would
did.
that be?
14.
14 times 3.
20.
So 128?
14.
No,
28.
that's wrong. I can't math. Wait. Where's the count?
42.
42.
I can't math.
15 times 3 is 45.
42.
Yeah.
Minus 1 each.
Wait a second. 42. According
the
to
answer
the
to
Hitchhiker's
life,
Guide to the Galaxy.
the universe, and everything. So
Hey,
Is that where they got it from?
Okay,
So when we screw up,
there are 42 chapters in Job.
take 42. Oh, hey, there's 42 chapters in Job. There's 42 animals. The 42 is the... Exactly. That's called a stretch.
yeah, I think that's called eisegesis. Pretty sure that's adding words to the text that aren't in the text.
I repent.
Just a
Dust and
guess.
ashes. I don't want to find 42 animals.
And
But they did it.
look at 42 verse 10. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and doubled his previous possessions.
He restores and increases everything.
Right.
Okay, so then, 42:10, the Lord restores the fortune of Job after he prays, right? Yeah, we're laughing. We took a break for a second
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about Woodstein.
Yeah.
It's all bread. It's just different shades of bread.
Oh, my brain.
That kind of hurts, but I'm not going to argue it.
You know I'm right.
That's one lesson you can take from the book of Job, yo. Just sometimes
How
you gotta
did we
have
get
to.
here again?
I don't know. Anyway,
Creator-creature distinction.
right. Which is a very
At
important.
least Job got his color straight. I mean...
Oh, okay, hold on. They didn't. I don't know if they had stain back then. Let's
No,
move on.
there's no way
They didn't have
didn't.
color back then. It was all black and white.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah.
the color wasn't invented until middle 20th century.
You remember when it was black and white? Do you, Dave?
I do. I was there, unlike Job.
It was until Technicolor came in and, Anyway,
Yep.
42:11. Then all his brothers and all his sisters and all who had known him before came to him, and they ate bread with him, bread with him in his house, and they consoled him and comforted him for all the adversities that the Lord had brought on him. And each one gave him one piece of money, and each a ring of gold.
Pardon me.
So his real friends come over and have a housewarming party.
It's like, hey, it's my boy.
After Job finally admits, hey, I'm wrong, and right after he gets done praying. And then the Lord blesses him a lot. And the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, Jemima, Keziah, and Karen Hapuch. I'm not even going to bother to try to pronounce those correct.
Yeah, you got it.
Hapuch.
Sure.
It's like the...
Yeah, close enough.
Clear your throat. Throw some consonants and vowels in there. You got it.
Somebody
With a little bit of
described-
phlegm,
Somebody described that as the Hebrew hairball.
You're right.
Not too long ago. Yeah, gotta cough it up a little bit. And in the land were found... In all the land, no women were found. So fair Job's daughters, and their father gave them inheritance among their brothers. So they all got equal inheritance, which of that day would have been not quite so much. Not quite so much for the women as for the men in the family, and so that's actually kind of a big deal culturally speaking.
Right.
Job lived 140 years, and he saw his sons and his grandsons 4 generations. He was an old dude. Job died an old man and full of days. And that's it.
Right.
God's faithfulness. One side note, I've always wondered this, and especially since I've been reading 1 Samuel more.
Uh-huh.
David, you might have an opinion on this. Okay, 1 Samuel 1. There was a certain man from that word, Ramathaim, Zophim, from the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph. Is that the same Elihu?
Doubt it.
Doubt it?
Yeah, doubt it a lot because Job dies at 140.
Oh, yeah, the timeline doesn't.
That length of age, when you go to Genesis 9 and 10, after the descendants of Noah.
I'm trying to do the math here on it.
Genesis 11. The age of mankind slowly gets less and less. Noah's about 900 something after the flood when he dies, and then his descendants Ham, Shem, and Japheth, they live for several hundred years, and it gets less and less, so that by the time you get to Abraham, he's 120 when he dies.
Yeah.
So, strictly going off of the death rate, or the age at death,
right,
it puts Job after the flood and before Abraham. That's not to say that isn't the only reason for concluding that.
And also,
but when by the time you get to Samuel,
it's been a while.
The tribes have been established. You had several hundred years in Egypt. You've had 40 years of wandering. You've had several hundred years in the cycle of the judges.
That's right. That's right.
And we're coming to the very end of the cycle of the judges by the time you get to Samuel.
Yeah, Samuel was the last judge, if I remember right.
So quite a bit of time in between Abraham and Samuel.
Right.
So not likely to be the same guy. I'm taking the age of Job at his death and
That would
putting
have to
that
be
in the place where it most realistically could fit.
Yeah.
Say what you will about the ages of people, and there's arguments that the genealogies in Genesis aren't canonical. I think that's bogus.
Yeah.
Jesus believed in a literal interpretation of Genesis. The ages that we have are
It has to be.
they're reliable. It's a consistent genealogy.
Yeah. I don't know. I just saw it and I was like, wait a minute, that's the same name. But also probably a common name for that culture too, probably.
Another reason it's unlikely is, well, we can somewhat confidently put Job between the time of Noah and the flood and the time of Abraham, and
an old dude.
Israel, getting started and off the ground.
A few times.
We really haven't. The text, the book of Job itself really doesn't have a concrete placing within that time frame.
Right.
It could have been relatively soon after Noah, or relatively later. It could have been relatively soon before Abraham, or
Right. It's an old book.
Yeah, Job. We really don't have a concrete point that we can say this is where exactly in the timeline Job took place. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all we've got for today. We're running up against our time here, so
Yeah.
thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the KingSmith podcast. We're super excited, so glad that you could join us today.
Yep.
We're thankful for David Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Bing, bing.
Thank you, David, for joining us. And,
You're welcome.
Talking Job with us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get in some application.
Yeah. This is a really interesting book. I advise everybody to read Job at least once. maybe twice. I'm going through my second time right now, and it's amazing.
Yeah. So many lessons. So many
lessons.
reminders. All right. And with that, peace out, yo.
Peace.